Welcome to the Fleet Geeks Podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook?
Right then. We are clearly live, but not live anywhere other than just the two of us, mate. Common HR mistakes for fleet operators. So we've recently just done the health and safety mistakes for fleet operators. So HR mistakes. So, wow, where do we start here? I think
exactly.
how many operators do you go into where they've just got a copied and pasted HR contract, which doesn't even cover any of the requirements for the fleet operation?
Yeah, we go into a lot, and another thing is that they don't even know what's on that. Sometimes the operator themselves, they've just got it because it covers what they need. They think it ticks a box, and you're right. You do see that quite a bit. They're not bespoke to the business. It probably doesn't match some other policies they've got because it's a policy that's just, like you say, off the internet or wrote by somebody that doesn't really understand their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think employment law is sort of regularly updated, isn't it? And we take our advice from our HR consultants, Nikki and Joe, who join us when we go and operate with fleet operators. We probably should have invited one of them to do the podcast, but they're not a fleet geeker. They probably wouldn't be too interested. They'd be like, that sounds boring. So here we are discussing it. But neither of us are particular HR specialists, but we do employ HR specialists at Flagship Partners, don't we? And certainly any fleet geekers who want HR support, we are able to provide that for them, no problem at all. But we do have a good level of working knowledge to be able to know what's right and what isn't. And I think one of the challenges is I think that I see really regularly is this thing of like this tolerance level, which is quite high. So tolerant, and then all of a sudden, without very much communication, sack him.
We see that
without a proper process being followed.
Yeah, funny you say about the tolerance thing. People, if somebody does something wrong and they're quite pally with the manager, it's fine, and there's got to be that consistency across the board. And sometimes it's difficult for people to want to do, but it's actually really important to keep that consistency because unfortunately, if something does go wrong and you've been too lenient, it's not good. And I think there just needs to be that consistency, and you have to take that personal side out of it sometimes and see. Well, that's probably the wrong thing to say, but you have to take that emotional side out of it sometimes, and and look at it in a bigger picture,
objectively.
Definitely. Quite objectively.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think certainly there's a lot of operators that we will deal with and sort of work with on a regular basis, and I think this will echo with a lot of people. There's that challenge around a lot of operators are very close with their drivers and their team members, aren't they?
And there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
No, there isn't.
That's the thing. We're not saying that, but there has to be a line in the sand sometimes.
And it's the blurred lines, isn't it? I'm sure that's a song, isn't it? Blurred lines, but it's like that.
Let's hear a bit of it. See if I recognise
it. No, you're right. Literally, I am that person. Mags that always laughs at me. She's like, you literally can sing a song totally away from what it actually sounds like, to the point of not being able to recognise it. 100% literally will make their ears bleed. But I think that sort of blurring of the boundaries. I think boundaries is a really important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
and obviously it's good to be have a great relationship with people that you work with. I think that's really, really vital, and it helps drive performance and engagement. But I think certainly from an HR and an employee relations point of view, it can make it tricky to do.
It's not easy. People don't like confrontation. People don't, especially if they've been pally with them for the last 3 years, etc. People don't want that confrontation when something goes wrong, unfortunately. So it is tricky. It's a really tricky skill to have. To be able to take away that emotional side of things and actually do the professional and the right thing.
Definitely. And I think so I think one of the other things is like when we're talking about common mistakes, I see that there's no real like performance evaluation or support for people in the fleet sector. I think, we have infringement letters which are part of the regulatory requirement that we need to make sure we uphold. But essentially, it's quite easy for drivers to feel like they're just battered with a stick all the time, and there's no real carrot for them.
No, you're right. I always say that it can be seen as quite a negative place to be a driver. People get frustrated with the trucks in front of them. Like you say, they may get fined for going through a red light or stopping in a box junction. Like I say, infringement letters. There isn't always that other side of it, is there? Like you say, the carrot. It is always the stick, unfortunately, at times. And that's sort of a bit of driver development, even. Like you say, it's things like that, developing in people and improving people. Perhaps that doesn't happen enough in our sector at times.
Just interestingly, I was interviewing Mark Cartwright for the Half Dozen Things podcast earlier this morning, and he was saying a few things. One of the schemes that Highways England, no, National Highways, got to be careful, they don't like to be called the wrong name, National Highways have implemented is that essentially they've got cameras which aren't enforcement cameras but pick up bad behaviours from drivers, for example, them using their phones. And they can provide that to operators. It's a scheme they're looking to roll out. You'll have to listen to the podcast. But they said they spoke to the transport managers and said, we've got this footage of your guys using their phones. What are you going to do about it?
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. We're really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. Flagship Partners offer a range of consultancy and training services to ensure that our customers remain compliant and have the best possible knowledge to be able to fulfill their work. If you're interested in support with any of our safety, HR or compliance services, or you want to train to be a transport manager or need driver CPC training, give us a call today.
And the transport managers have just gone, sack them. It's like gross misconduct, breaches policy, sack them, get rid of them. And Mark was saying that actually, he's an advocate for that. Doesn't solve the road safety problem, and it doesn't solve the driver shortage problem. That actually, we have to go through a retraining process with people to be able to help support them. And it is difficult, particularly with phone use, because it's really difficult to find that. We know that it's wrong. We know that it's illegal. And I'm not necessarily saying people who sack people for using the phones are doing anything wrong, but at the same time, you have to take a level of responsibility as a business owner, operator, manager, transport manager. You have to take a level of responsibility. If you have not been proactive enough in training and speaking to people, then behaviour out on the road may be different to what you expect it to be.
We spoke earlier about culture as well. Making sure that culture's right, so people know that shouldn't be doing. They know they shouldn't be doing these things. But like you say, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Straight away, you say it's a breach of policy, isn't it? Using your mobile phone. So gross misconduct. Perhaps it is. Yeah, but like you say, I'm a firm believer as well in educating people. And does everyone make the odd mistake? Is that a mistake? You're pretty knowingly doing that, aren't you? But it's a difficult one. It's a podcast on itself, I believe.
I think so. I think when we talk about sort of performance and conduct management process, one of the things that and we see commonly operators getting this wrong. So the suggestion from us is certainly around essentially initially issuing a letter of concern, which is like this doesn't quite meet requirements, and then escalate into a verbal warning, onto a written, to a final written, and then dismissal. Obviously, there are certain things that you potentially bypass that process, but it's really, really important that you make sure you have a documented investigation process that you go through, or investigation meeting. Certainly, some of the things that I've learned around that is that when you hold an investigation meeting, there need to be thorough notes. They need to be signed by both parties to say that they agree, and it gives people an opportunity to have any mitigating circumstances considered. And that needs to be done without prejudice, doesn't it? And then you need to give at least 48 hours notice of any disciplinary meeting. And then that disciplinary meeting needs to be again minuted and there needs to be an adjournment as well for a decision to be made to ensure that it meets the requirements.
It should never be a preconceived decision either. You should always go into them with an open mind, because anything could happen in that disciplinary meeting, that disciplinary hearing. So it's always good to go in with an open mind, because there is always something. People have had time to go back and reflect on what they've done. They may come back with something that's not been brought up in the investigation meeting. So definitely go in there with an open mind, no preconceived outcomes of the meeting.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes back to that whole happen. Sorry. Yeah.
I'd like to think that don't happen, but I'm sure it does. No. So
I was going to say, it goes back to the old thing about the facts and the truth, and the difference between the facts and the truth, and the investigation's there to try and assimilate all the facts, to then come up with some semblance of truth. Although essentially it's very important to ensure that you give everyone a fair hearing, and make sure that people, have the opportunity to state why something's occurred the way it has, for example. So
definitely.
Yeah, really important. Brilliant, mate. I'm just trying to think of any other common mistakes. I think that people are often shoot straight to guns when potentially retraining is an opportunity for people.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone should be given that chance, in my opinion, for retraining. And like you say, if the induction process isn't up to scratch, that may be a reason someone's done something wrong. So yeah, and I think it's always, if sometimes if people have done something wrong, revisit your own policies. Just make sure that you've covered everything off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a few things that I want to highlight for people is that employment contracts, generally speaking, that are just pulled off the internet, aren't good enough. They're not. No, they don't cover the current cover the current laws. Particularly, I think one of the challenges that we've come across when we've written employment contracts for operators is the good working practice that's come in, which is around making sure that average working hours is covered as part of that contract, because a lot of operators will pay on day rate or on week rate rather than on hourly rate, and we need to ensure that drivers are clearly working over and above minimum wage requirements. So that contract needs to demonstrate that is being achieved. And then it's important to ensure that you leave yourself some wiggle room. So with our contracts, for example, a lot of the policies are annexes rather than part of the contract, so that you're able to change them as and when is a requirement. But a really, really good example is, I'm aware of, is that employment contracts are really, really clear when they're well written. They're really, really clear on what the obligations are. And for example, with our contract, it's something, to be fair, Jamie might feel a little bit down about this, but it's very clear. The contract states 8 bank holidays a year, for example. So it's a really clear requirement. But this year, the government have decided to give everyone an extra bank holiday. Well, at least from a policy point of view, you're really clear and everyone knows where they stand when the contract says a certain thing. And it means that everyone's dealt with in a fair way when trying to deal with that, because sometimes operators might go, well, yeah, you can have it off, but you can't, you've got to work. And all of a sudden it gets very muddy, doesn't it?
It does. That's interesting what you said. A common HR mistake is sometimes fairness. You're right, across the board. I've seen that where, you can have that Friday off next week. And then someone goes, hang on, you wouldn't let me have it off. I've seen that happen. And you're right, it's fairness.
Fairness and consistency.
Yeah, definitely.
I think
people appreciate that. People understand that they can't always get everything they want. That's life. But if they see someone else getting it when someone's been told they can't, that's when the problems arise.
Definitely. And a good contract will help protect the business in case of a tribunal or in case of any grievance. And having a good and thorough disciplinary process is very, very important too. So, if anyone that's listening wants some professional advice, please do get in touch. I think we've probably exhausted our HR knowledge there, Jamie.
That way above my knowledge of it all. Yeah, definitely. But it's so important, isn't it, in any business? It's a function that makes everything work, really.
And I think this demonstrates that we can't be experts at everything, can we?
No,
you've got to stick to what you're good at. We do cover HR, but we use Nikki and Joe to do that because that's their specialism.
Exactly. That's the key to doing it right, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Professionals to do these jobs.
Get the right people with the right qualifications, because when it comes to health and safety, they potentially couldn't advise. They couldn't advise on transport regulatory issues either. So, very interesting. Anyway, Jake, great chatting.
Pete.
And everyone, hope you've enjoyed listening. Catch you on the next one. Take care.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.